In our area, protesters today holding rallies in at least 9 communities, including Appleton and Green Bay. Thousands attended both of those events. New at 10, Jamal James spoke to those who went about the message they're hoping to send back to the nation's capital.
With peaceful protests filling up College Avenue in downtown Appleton, people had a lot to say after nearly 9 months since President Donald Trump was sworn back into office.
If I see someone that's doing something I told my kid not to do in kindergarten and he's doing it as a 70, 80-year-old man, there's something wrong with society that you're willing to support that.
Houdini Plaza was filled with signs showing concerns for a number of changes that have been made during that time, like healthcare, women's rights, and the way U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement operates. With thousands of people here in downtown Appleton protesting the current administration, they're doing the exact same thing here in Green Bay, walking on Walnut Street from Joannes Park all the way down to the Brown County Courthouse, with local authorities providing security along the way. Protesters marching and making their voices heard, like Andy Locke, who's here voicing his concerns about the future generations of his family.
Jobs were a little easier, houses were a lot cheaper, healthcare was a lot more affordable, and it just seems like everything is slowly getting taken away from the people who really need it the most.
Others, like Matthew Bruckner, says an even better way to express your opinion is by voting.
Vote with the values that people should be treated with respect and dignity. And we live in the richest nation in the world, and we shouldn't have all of this hate.
During both rallies, counter-protests were present, but none of them wanted to speak with us. Local law enforcement says no one was arrested. In Green Bay, Jamal James, Action 2 News.
We also reached out to the Wisconsin Republican Party for a reaction to the protesting in our area. Chairman Brian Schimming released a statement saying, quote, "These No Kings protests are nothing but a distraction from the Democrat shutdown. Tammy Baldwin and 6 of her colleagues could end the shutdown today. Instead, they're more focused on appeasing far-left groups over providing needed resources to women, children, veterans, and Americans," end quote.